Ladies and gentlemen, imagine waking up one morning to headlines that say someone has placed a $4.2 million bet on silver reaching $120 by June, not 10 years from now, not someday in the distant future, but within months. At the same time, reports circulate that China is aggressively accumulating silver, quietly sweeping physical supply from global markets, while regulators in the United States appear unusually silent. When massive money moves quietly behind the scenes and powerful nations begin repositioning around precious metals, it raises an important question for anyone paying attention to the global economy. What signals might the market be sending right now? Because this story is not just about silver, it's about awareness. It's about how global power, financial systems, and strategic resources intersect. And more importantly, it's about understanding why moments like this often reveal deeper shifts happening beneath the surface of the financial world. The title itself, 4.2 Bet on $120 Silver by June, China's Silver Raid Exposes America's Regulatory Silence, captures something that experienced market observers always watch carefully, when large capital makes bold moves while geopolitical forces quietly change the supply landscape. Now let's slow down and look at what this could mean from an educational perspective. Think about financial markets like an ocean. On the surface, most people only see the waves, daily price movements, headlines, short-term volatility. But deep beneath the surface are currents moving enormous volumes of water. Those currents represent institutional money, government policy, and global resource strategies. When someone places a multi-million-dollar bet on a commodity like silver, that wave may simply be the visible ripple of a much larger current moving underneath. Consider the psychology behind a bet like this. In financial markets, large positions are rarely placed based purely on excitement or speculation. Major players typically analyze supply chains, industrial demand, geopolitical relationships, and regulatory environments. When silver enters the conversation, it becomes even more interesting because silver is not just a precious metal used for jewelry or coins. It's a strategic industrial material used in electronics, solar technology, medical equipment, and advanced manufacturing. That means the demand for silver isn't only driven by investors, it's driven by the technological future itself. Now imagine a scenario where a large economy begins accumulating significant amounts of silver. From a strategic standpoint, that could signal preparation for long-term industrial expansion, energy technology growth, or currency diversification. In other words, the metal may represent something far larger than a simple commodity trade. And this is where the narrative becomes fascinating. Markets often react strongly when supply suddenly becomes tight. Picture a crowded theater with one small exit. As long as everyone remains calm, there's no problem. But the moment people realize space is limited, movement accelerates. In commodity markets, physical supply can create similar dynamics. When large buyers quietly absorb available inventory, the balance between supply and demand begins to shift. The important lesson here is not about predicting a specific price target. Markets are complex systems influenced by countless variables, but moments like this can serve as educational reminders about how global economic forces interact. Think about the concept of information asymmetry. Some participants in financial markets spend enormous resources gathering data, studying supply chains, and analyzing geopolitical developments. Meanwhile, everyday observers often see only fragments of the picture through headlines and social media. That doesn't mean individuals cannot become more informed. In fact, awareness is one of the most powerful tools anyone can develop. When stories emerge about large commodity positions, strategic resource accumulation, or regulatory decisions that appear unusually quiet, they offer an opportunity to step back and analyze the bigger picture. Why might a nation prioritize securing physical resources? Why might large capital allocate millions toward a specific commodity scenario? Why might regulatory bodies respond slowly or cautiously in situations involving global markets? These questions are not accusations or conclusions. They are simply invitations to think critically about how complex the modern financial ecosystem has become. History provides many examples of commodities playing important roles in economic transitions. Oil shaped the geopolitics of the 20th century. Rare earth elements influence modern technology supply chains, and precious metals have historically served as signals of monetary uncertainty, industrial demand, or strategic positioning. Silver sits at a unique intersection of these forces. It has the historical reputation of money, yet it also powers cutting-edge technologies like solar panels and advanced electronics. That dual role means its market behavior sometimes reflects both financial sentiment and industrial demand simultaneously. Now imagine global demand increasing while supply becomes increasingly concentrated. Even small shifts in that balance can attract the attention of large financial players who constantly search for asymmetric opportunities. Situations where the potential outcome could be disproportionately larger than the initial risk. Again, none of this guarantees any particular market result, but understanding the reasoning behind such positions helps build financial literacy. Another interesting aspect of this story is the idea of regulatory silence. In complex markets, regulatory bodies often face difficult challenges. They must balance oversight with market freedom, transparency with stability, and global coordination with national interests. Sometimes what appears to be silence may simply be caution, investigation, or procedural timing. But for observers, the perception of silence can create curiosity, and curiosity leads to research, which ultimately leads to greater awareness. Financial awareness is not about predicting the future perfectly. It's about learning to read signals, recognize patterns, and understand how global systems interact. For example, one useful habit is studying supply and demand fundamentals rather than focusing only on price charts. Another helpful approach is observing geopolitical developments that could affect resource flows. Trade policies, industrial expansion, technological innovation, and currency strategies can all influence commodity markets in subtle ways. Developing this mindset transforms how people view financial news. Instead of reacting emotionally to headlines, they begin asking analytical questions. What incentives are involved? Who benefits from this development? What structural trends might be unfolding behind the scenes? These questions encourage deeper thinking rather than impulsive reactions. And perhaps the most important mindset shift is recognizing that markets are long stories, not short episodes. The headlines we see today may be chapters in narratives that began years earlier and will continue evolving long into the future. That's why education matters. When viewers study economic history, they begin noticing repeating themes. Resource scarcity, technological breakthroughs, currency adjustments, strategic accumulation, institutional positioning. These forces appear again and again across decades. The names and players may change, but the patterns often rhyme. So when someone hears about a multi-million-dollar bet on silver, combined with international accumulation and regulatory debate, the real value lies not in chasing the excitement, but in studying the structure behind the story. Because knowledge compounds. Every time someone learns more about how commodities function within global systems, they strengthen their ability to interpret future events with clarity rather than confusion. In many ways, financial awareness is similar to learning a language. At first, the signals feel random and overwhelming, but over time, patterns begin to emerge, trends become understandable, and complex headlines start making sense within a broader context. This is how disciplined observers approach markets. They remain calm, curious, and analytical. They recognize that bold claims and dramatic predictions will always appear in financial media. But instead of focusing on noise, they examine fundamentals, incentives, and structural forces shaping the global economy. And that approach creates a powerful advantage: perspective. Perspective allows someone to view events not as isolated incidents, but as pieces of a larger puzzle involving technology, resources, geopolitics, and monetary systems. So whether silver reaches dramatic price levels or simply continues its long journey through global markets, the deeper lesson remains the same. Stay informed, stay curious, study the systems shaping the modern economy, because the real wealth in moments like this is not a specific price target. It is the understanding gained by paying attention. And when viewers develop that level of awareness, headlines transform from distractions into opportunities for learning. So if this discussion sparked your curiosity about global markets, strategic resources, and the forces shaping the future of money, make sure to stay connected to conversations like this. Share your perspective in the comments. Let us know what signals you're watching in the world of commodities and global finance. And if you found value in this breakdown, consider supporting the channel with a like and subscribing for more deep explorations into the economic stories unfolding around us. Because sometimes the most important moves in the financial world happen quietly, long before the rest of the world realizes what has begun.